Hey guys, how's it going? Matt from Foul Ball Productions here. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Hope that you're doing great. I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much. The Cocktail Lounge is back. Now that I've got a PC that works and an internet connection that's stable, the show is on. And the show is here. And joining me is none other than the lovely, the talented Vigilante Williamson.
Oh, geez, I did not think you were talking about me. But
Yeah.
I will take it.
I
will take it. Vigilante Wednesday here on another episode of the MF podcast. And again, we have guests.
We do.
That's cool. We have guests we've allowed into the lounge. They're classing up the joint, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Joining us is Kadish and Juju from the Salty Nerd podcast. And their meteoric rise to fame this week, where they interacted with a A-List Hollywood director who had some choice words for their outrageous statements that I was personally shocked and appalled to read. I could barely stand it.
And also our shitty studio, don't forget.
Yes, and your shitty studio. That was so petty. Well, hello, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Yeah. So you guys have been. You said you've been on YouTube and podcasting for like a year and a half. It sounds like, right? Last October. And so the other guy that you podcast with, you say that you try to keep it. You try to keep it positive. Try not to attack and criticize. Tell us a little bit about your show.
Okay. Well, we're one half of the Salty Nerd podcast on here, so it's four people. One of them is Matt Vader, 74, the barbarian space Viking, as he likes to call himself. And then we have Alex, who is the host of the show, and he was the originator of it. And it started off back in 2018. I was looking for an outlet to voice my frustration over The Last Jedi. I turned to Twitter. And I started writing all these articles kind of deconstructing The Last Jedi in terms of like its filmic merit. And very kind of highbrow film criticism type stuff. Mm-hmm. And Alex was one of the guys who would comment on all my tweets, and I started following him. He started following me, and I eventually learned that he was a Las Vegas local, which is where Jude and I live.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, "Hey, dude, we should meet up sometime." And he's like, "Oh, I don't know about meeting people from Twitter. That's kind of sketchy." Eventually, I was able to convince him, and he invited this other guy, Matt Vader, that he also met off of Twitter, to come join us for lunch. And the three of us got together and hit it off. And we started meeting for coffee at a local kind of nerd coffee shop in town called Grouchy John's about once a week. And we would just sit there and we would talk movies, TV shows, and have debates and all types of stuff, a lot of laughs. And at the time, Alex was trying to do his podcast with some friends, across the country in Chicago, but they were very bad about keeping schedules. So like they would drop out at the last minute. They wouldn't be able to do it. Just not a lot of availability. And he was always bitching about it. And so we were like, "Hey, dude, why don't we just do the podcast with you? I mean, we're right here in town." And so he was like, "Hey, that's a good idea." And so we started going to his house, and he'd have like a little fold-out table, a crappy little mixer that he got off of eBay, and like $30 microphones. And we would just sit there and do what we basically did at the coffee shop, which is talk movies and dirty stuff. And when the lockdowns happened in 2020, we were all kind of furloughed, and we weren't really doing a whole lot. And so we were like, well, what if we try to do the podcast full time and get that to the point where it's making enough money where we could maybe possibly quit our jobs and actually do something that we love. And so we all got together and invested in a lot of equipment, set up a home studio at my place because I had a room I wasn't using. And for all of 2020, we just went really hard on the audio end of things, publishing to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, building audiences there. And it was working out pretty good. And then at the beginning of this year, we started doing the YouTube thing because we finally got our camera set up and recording set up, all worked out. And now we just basically live record our podcasts every Tuesday. And we're having a lot of fun doing it. And that's pretty much the origins of the Salty Nerd podcast. And it's meant to be like an escape. Alex had always envisioned it as an escape from all the crappy stuff that's out there, like the politics and the social justice and all that stuff. So if you want to get away from that, you come to our show. and we kind of do our shows based around different themes, like ninja movies, for instance. We'll review 3 ninja movies that kind of go with that theme of terrible sequels.
Hey, Matt Vader.
Yeah,
He's here.
our other co-host.
Hey,
He's at work right now, so
Oh, okay.
yeah.
unable to join us.
Working
Well,
and working.
We
Appreciate
go,
it.
yeah, unless if he works all night, that's an issue. But we go a long time on this show, so he's got the time.
Yeah,
Not
he
you
works,
guys have to stay. We're not kidnapping you.
No.
He works swing shifts, so like he's
Okay.
there late at night.
He'll be
But,
there a while. He's a very important man in Las Vegas.
Oh, ooh,
He is, and
fancy.
he's probably the saltiest of the nerds.
Yes, he is.
We base our shows around different themes, and we do long form content, so like an hour plus usually. And we're the type of show where, like, if you've got like a long drive or a long commute, like you pop us on, and we kind of help get you through the drive. And we're more of a comedy show than anything. So like, even though we're reviewing movies and stuff, it's really about 4 friends kind of sitting together, kind of getting drunk, talking about movies. And having
great.
fun doing it, yeah. So
Definitely with this show, especially with the drunk part.
Yeah, our goal is to make people laugh and give them some knowledge about movies and stuff like that they might not otherwise have, and just kind of make it feel like they're in a bar with friends, having a good time.
So, are you like a film major from college or a filmmaker or something like that? You talk. The way it sounds to me is that you have some kind of expertise in this more than maybe the average person does.
Yeah. So I was a film school graduate. I was there's a contest called the Nichols Fellowship Screenwriting Contest, and I was a semifinalist in that in
cool.
2001. That got me an invite to the Los Angeles Film School, where I went and did some master's work, and I made a movie with Jeremy Renner, who is Hawkeye in the Avengers. And so like I wrote and directed a movie based off of my feature-length screenplay that was in the semi.
Now, is that a valid enough film for James Mangold to care about?
Probably not. It was a
No?
$15,000 short film.
Yeah. It only matters if it's a certain budget. Yeah.
Yeah.
He made that very
Hollywood didn't
clear.
pick you, so you're not as good as him.
Not
That's
as
what it
good.
is.
No. And there's no such thing as objective criticism, no matter what the source is. If he says it's good, it's good.
Right.
You know what was funny is when he asked me to give him my resume so that we could be on equal footing, I told him about making my movie with Jeremy.
Yeah,
he never responded. He kind of.
I don't think he expected anything. I think he was like, "Oh shit, this guy does. He actually did work in Hollywood." So that's.
But in addition to that, so that short film of mine with Jeremy, it was meant to be a calling card piece to get funding for the feature, and it was one of those things where like people are willing to sit down and watch a 15-minute short film, and if they like it, they'll want to read the screenplay. And that got me an invite to the Cannes Film Festival where we premiered the short film. And so that was about 2004. And that's where I met.
When it still mattered.
Yeah, and that's where I first met Quentin Tarantino and all these other people. And at the Cannes Film Festival, I hooked up with some producers. They had done like a couple Lethal Weapon movies, a lot of John Turteltaub movies, like Phenomenon and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so we were in talks with this Israeli producer named Avi Lerner, who you've probably seen a lot of his movies, but didn't know he was really involved. He was one of these overseas financiers who just kind of like finances a bunch of stuff in Hollywood. And it was going along pretty well, but I was getting a lot of pressure because I wanted Jeremy to be in the lead in the movie. And a lot of people, like at the time, Jeremy, he was still doing like beer commercials, and he had just won an Independent Spirit Award for Dahmer. So like not a whole lot of people knew who he was. But I love the guy, and so I was like, I really want him to be the star of my movie. And everyone was like, no, you got to hire Josh Hartnett. You got to do this. You got to do that. And so I was butting heads with a lot of these people. And around this time, my movie was, the concept was a con man who specializes in conning criminals. It was kind of like a caper film.
Mm-hmm.
The issue was that a lot of kind of like crime con man movies came out around this time that were really bad. And so everyone in Hollywood was like, oh, these movies suck. Like we can't get them going. And I'm like, but I won. I was a semifinalist, and I got this Independent Spirit Award winner and all this other stuff. And everyone's like, nah. And so it kind of
Nah.
it kind of like languished in development hell. And around that time, I didn't have a lot of money, and so I started a different separate business, marketing business, and that took off and was doing really well. And so I was like, well, what if I just did this and tried to get enough money to finance my own stuff instead of having to be a professional beggar in Hollywood? Because that's pretty much what you are when you work in the industry. But while I was doing that, I was still like going to meetings with producers. I was getting hired to like adapt books from screenplay into screenplays and stuff like that, but they never really went anywhere, as a lot of stuff does. So like I had about 10 years of experience in the entertainment industry, in filmmaking and TV and stuff like that. I worked at Paramount Studios for a little while. I was there while Enterprise was being shot, the Star Trek series. And, just kind of got to see how the inner workings of the studio goes. And so like that gave me an idea of how the political ramifications within studio politics kind of branches out and affects everything that is made at that studio. And that gave me a lot of good insight. And so by the time The Last Jedi came around, everyone was talking about Kathleen Kennedy getting fired, and I was the only one there saying like, no, she's not going anywhere. Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers had me on this big debate panel, and I was the only one saying like, Kathleen Kennedy's not getting fired, and they were all laughing at me and calling me idiot. And then like when this whole Mangold thing came out, Jeremy put out a video, defending me, and he also said that I was right about Kathleen Kennedy. I was like, it only took you 4 years to admit it, buddy. But
Vindicated.
When that happens.
Yeah.
You were the Nostradamus on that.
Yeah. So I lived in Hollywood for a long time. I went to film school. Like from the moment I was like 15 years old, I wanted to be a filmmaker. And so like I've studied it. I've lived, breathed, eat, slept it, and it's still a passion of mine. Like I came out to Las Vegas to become a novelist and get away from all the LA stuff. And so you can kind of see some of my books back here. These are all things I've written.
Oh, wow. Right on. I also see the Doomcock back there. Hey, well, that's interesting, man. I think one of the most interesting things I think you said back to James Mangold, which I thought really showed, because you did everything, all the tweets back and forth. You showed a lot of class. You showed a lot of poise. You didn't really seem to get ruffled going up against this guy. And I guess it's probably because, it's you're not that impressed by it. I mean, you're a fan, I guess, but if you're around, this is my interpretation, but it's like, if you're around that stuff, it demystifies a lot of it. I used to live in Hollywood. I was an actor for like 10, 15 years, and I was in LA for 10. And, it's still, you always still respect people, but it does demystify the kind of like the way we idolize people. And you're like, oh, okay, they're just people. After a while, you start to figure that out. But the one thing I thought that was really impressive was this comment you said where it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like, yeah, I could give you all my credentials, but that doesn't stop me from being able to say my opinion wherever I want, whenever I want. And I was like, that was so badass. I mean, like I feel like if this happened around like Last Jedi era, like you would have gotten swept up in like, the toxic fandom. But I think we're like really getting to the other side of a lot of this stuff. And you really came out on top of that whole exchange, in my opinion.
Well, I've had a lot of experience arguing with high-powered Hollywood people. When I was in the industry, I would have arguments with producers all the time. I would have confrontations with actors, with other writers. I've been in writers' rooms where people almost broke out into fistfights over disagreements. So to me, like someone like James Mangold, it's like, A-List Hollywood director. I'm like, no, he's just a guy.
Right.
And in fact, a lot of these A-listers, they live in such a bubble that sometimes they need someone to kind of talk straight with them. They may not like to hear it, but like if you're coming from a place where you're not trying to be mean or browbeat them, if you're trying to be constructive, oftentimes they'll come to appreciate that later on. Now, James Mangold, I like to say that there's two types of people that I've met in Hollywood. One are complete sociopaths who are completely evil and looking to exploit people left and right and are complete jerks. And the others are genuinely the most creative people I've ever met. And they're jerks because they, believe in themselves and their vision so much that they just don't let anyone push them around. Quentin Tarantino is a great example of that. I've met Quentin Tarantino a couple times now. I doubt he remembers me, but I remember him simply because he was the biggest jackass in the game.
Careful.
I've ever run into. I'm not saying that he's not a talented guy. I love Tarantino movies, but he's a jerk, and I think he'll be the first to admit it.
Watch out! You're gonna have Twitter beef with him next.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I feel like Mangold's kind of in the same category. Like, he's a very talented writer and director. He's a good storyteller. I like pretty much everything I've seen of his, except maybe Night and Day. But like, I had forgotten that Mangold was even involved in Indy 5 when I wrote that tweet, because like I wasn't.
Yeah, he seeked you out.
Yeah, I wasn't really following the Indiana Jones 5 news because I just didn't care.
Who gives a shit? Who could possibly care about this? It's like Vigilante said. It's like the sequel absolutely no one asked for, and a franchise that's just already like so. Oof, we all.
This
cringe.
is a funeral 5 years after the funeral, or no, a decade plus after the funeral. It's like, no, I'm over the death of Indiana Jones. I almost call it Indianapolis Jones because it's not Indiana Jones anymore. So it's like, okay, it's over. There's nothing else to do here.
This
Listen, I don't want to spoil it for you, but this is where Indiana Jones and Star Trek merge, and Indiana Jones is now an android, but I probably said too much.
That would probably be better than what they came up. That's better than Indy 4 already.
This movie
get Shia LaBeouf swinging from trees, so we're already ahead.
This movie is 100% Kathleen Kennedy. Like, she's the one who's responsible for pushing this forward. Spielberg was involved early on, but he left because, like, he just didn't really want to do it. Lucas is not involved. It was a franchise that Disney obviously wanted to do, but you could have done it in a different way. You could have like rebooted it with like a different actor, like whatever. But Kennedy needed a win. Like, like Lucasfilm isn't making movies right now. And so she needed something to get her back in theaters, which is like where her power really lies, is the theatrical stuff, because the TV stuff she's kind of like competing with Jon Favreau over. So in order to get back into the movie business, like, she needed to resurrect the second most popular franchise in Lucasfilm's library, which is Indiana Jones. And so she's really been the driving force in getting this movie made.
Yeah, and I think because during like the lockdowns and stuff, it was available on Netflix. They probably had incredible numbers. That there's probably like a lot of indication that this franchise there's still a lot of interest in it, guys. Look, a fifth one would make us a whole lot of money. My counter to that is like, no. It's that we hate the other stuff so much. We're just going back and watching the things we enjoy because your new entertainment is so friggin' terrible. But yeah, I go ahead. Sorry, Vish.
Actually, I have one quick question. I mean, because you mentioned being right about Kathleen Kennedy not being fired, there's been a little controversy of that same issue. But Indiana Jones 5, she's not going to be fired this year, is she? She has to go at least another couple years just for this movie to get released.
Kennedy will be in her position until she decides she wants to leave it.
God, that's what I think too.
I think so.
I don't want to hear that, but that's what I think too. I think she'll be 80, 90.
I mean, she's so well insulated.
Mr. Burns situation.
Yeah, she's so well insulated in her position. She's got a lot of allies who are backing her. Like Spielberg's still her best friend. Lucas, a lot of people forget George Lucas handpicked her to, the company. She's got a lot of support on the board. She's the most powerful woman in Hollywood. She's got a lot of good political connections. Her husband, Frank Marshall, is a super producer. Alan Horn, who runs Disney's movie division, he's a good friend of Kathleen Kennedy's. She's got everyone backing her, and so like there's really nothing that can displace her until she decides, you know what, I'm tired, I just want to retire and enjoy my life. But even then, if she steps down, she's going to handpick the person who replaces her, and so it's just going to be Kathleen Kennedy 2.0 at that point. So it's not looking good for Lucasfilm, is what I'll say.
I had a question just earlier about like what you're talking about, the nature of your podcast, where you guys try to avoid talking politics and stuff. And my question is, how? And it's because it's so. When I started doing this channel, I kind of tried to do that too, because I was still like had one foot in like working in LA, and I was like, I don't want to say or do anything that would alienate my chances of ever working. Eventually, I gave up. I stopped caring about that and started speaking my mind. But it's like, I think the truth is because if you're talking about modern entertainment, how can you divorce politics from that conversation?
Well, most of what we talk about is not modern. We do a lot of like 80s reviews, and a lot of Roger Corman, a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme, like
cool.
a lot of like evergreen content, and we just keep it to the content. And like even when we are talking about something that, like we just talked about Army of the Dead, we were just talking about the film. Yeah, yeah. Don't get started because just don't. But yeah, we just keep it to the content, and like, you know, when we like to think of ourselves as like a group of friends sitting in a bar just shooting the shit about movies, and that's kind of the vibe that we want to have. So, and that's what we are. Like, the guys come over at like 9:30 in the morning, and we start doing shots, and we start talking about movies, and we just shoot the shit. And it's not about politics. It's not about what's going on. It's about this bullshit that we watched.
Yeah, and also all four of us have such different kind of like places where we're coming from mentally, like, you know, politically, stuff like that. Matt Vader 74, for instance, like he'll go off on a political rant, and usually we have to cut that out and give that to our patrons.
That's on the Patreon content.
That's funny.
But we do talk, we do touch on these things if it relates to the movie that we're talking about. And so like, for instance, like we'll talk about how like a Netflix TV show, for instance, has all this social justice stuff pumped and identity politics stuff pumped into it because Netflix is mandating it, and not because it's a natural outgrowth of the story. And so we'll talk about how it influences something that we're talking about in a negative way, like The Last Jedi. And
okay, so you don't avoid it entirely. It's just if it's germane to the conversation.
If it's relevant. And also some of us have different takes on things. So like, for instance, like Alex might have a completely different, like he'll say like, oh, this isn't woke at all, and Vader would be like, oh dude, it's totally woke, and we'll have a little debate.
Okay, because this is like, I actually, real quick, I'm going to just take a pause and we'll pick this conversation up in just 1 second. One, because I got a super chat. Thank you very much from Jock Nerdy. Hail, my friend. Tip $15.
Hail, Jock Nerdy.
Thanks, brother. And he just says, tip it up front. Hail.
Nice.
Thank you very much, brother. Always appreciated. Jock Nerdy's got a channel too. He's just started up, so check out Jock Nerdy. Thanks, brother. And he says, hey, everybody.
We're not going to call you Pat tonight. We're not going to call you Pat.
No. But also, someone else is joining the show. The cocktail lounge is this is the calmest and least populated it's ever been. So it's generally like a circus. But we got one more guy joining us. It's that 70s rock fan. Hey, brother.
Hell, that 70s rock fan.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. Matt and Vigilante, nice to see you guys again. And thank you for joining us, Salty Nerd, and welcome to the lounge. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I can assure you, Matt, I am stone cold sober tonight, so nothing to worry about.
Oh well. Hey, that's fun. There was an episode a few weeks ago where I was pretty much blackout drunk streaming, so that was interesting. It's the cocktail lounge. It's supposed to be a hang. This is the most formal.
Exactly. It's Friday night.
Yeah.
Friday night.
But getting back to the conversation, Thomas Bowman says, today's entertainment media is driven by political agenda. You can't talk about new media without politics being in the equation. I kind of feel like that almost universally.
But you know what? I think you guys, and I've been wanting to talk more about old content. In fact, we have. I mean, we did this From Dusk Till Dawn stream and stuff like that. But like, I think at a certain point, you realize hashtag is going to be woke. And that may not always be the case, but that's going to be the case more often than not. So it's like, okay. Or in certain cases, like Indiana Jones 5, I mean, we'll obviously get probably more into it, but it's just like, okay, this franchise is dead. Wokeness aside, I don't want to see another Indiana Jones 5. So we're not going to get good content from anyone. So we might as well remember the stuff, or check out movies maybe we didn't watch. Maybe it's a certain movie that everybody watched, but you just didn't check it out. Going back in the past, that's where there's a lot of fun to be had in the past, a lot more than right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that at all, dude. That's very true, and I think it's noble that you guys are trying. I think it's tough though, because it does seem to be, I don't know how far you guys want to go down this road, but it's like I was listening to, do you guys ever listen to Friday Night Tights, the Friday show? So I was listening to that earlier. Eric July was on, and there just seems to be such a malicious coordinated destruction of these IPs. And that's where I guess it's tougher for me to just kind of like, well, I'll critique it from a structure point of view. It's like, yeah, that's relevant up until a point, but it's not like these are just a series of coincidences of being bad films. Like, oh, this just happens to be bad. Like they tried their best, but it was a big mistake. It's like, that's just not the case. Like there's some malice involved here. And I guess for me, it's a priority to point that out. I don't know. It just seems like it's forefront. It's like, I would love to just talk about the quality of the film, but they won't let me.
Well, you know what's funny is like Hollywood is pretty consistent in how it likes to ruin things. And since they started making sequels and stuff like that in the 20s and 30s, it always kind of like perpetuates itself, right? So like you have Hollywood that is creatively bankrupt and they just keep recycling older, better content, and it's always been like that. But like we only remember the good stuff, the original stuff. So like once the counterculture movement from the 60s and 70s kind of gave way to the blockbuster movement of the 80s, a lot of us grew up in that time period, and so like we remember the good stuff, even though there was like just as much schlock being done back then. So Hollywood hasn't really changed all that much, but what has changed is that now what a lot of these big franchises that established themselves in the 80s and have like 30 plus years of history behind them and are super popular and are super lucrative and stuff like that, what a lot of these kind of like woke Hollywood people are doing is they're trying to co-opt that stuff and use it as a means of propaganda as opposed to entertainment. And that's really what the issue has become is that our entertainment isn't meant to be propaganda. It's meant to be entertainment. We're supposed to be able to go to Hollywood to escape all the BS, the riots, the political, races, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And,
better.
And kind
For
of
the
like,
love of God.
Yeah, turn our brain off and just have a good time watching it. And
that's not like this isn't novel. That's always what entertainment's been about. I mean, that's why if you go back and look at the content from like, the early part of the 20th century, it's very saccharine. It's very sweet because the 20th century was brutal. You had the Great Depression, World War I and II, and everybody wanted to not have to face stuff like that, not deal with it on their downtime, on their entertainment leisure time. That's when you get to finally enjoy something and just have a little bit of fun. And that seems to be impossible.
Were made in the early 20th century because of that. I mean, they're almost a complete reaction to World War II.
Well, that one of the things that we try to stay away from is rage peddling. We can be upset with how a franchise is being treated. Like, for instance, Falcon and Winter Soldier. We did a week-by-week breakdown on that show, and it was so painful with all like the propaganda that they shoved into that which should have been a fun comic book show, turned into like a preachy mess of a propaganda piece. And poor Jude, like she had to suffer through. And like we kind of enjoyed WandaVision, we kind of obsess and theorize over that show. And then when Winter Soldier came out, we were just like, oh, we're white. Should we feel bad for watching this show, type thing.
And I think that's a great example of like how we've managed to kind of skirt the line as far as like talking about politics. Like we don't make it the forefront of what we talk about. We talk about like, how good is this? How does it affect us? How does it make us feel? And if something is pushing an agenda, like I fucking feel that and I'm not happy about it. Like don't push what you want me to believe on you. Make me some fucking entertainment and make it entertaining.
And it's funny because
it seems reasonable.
Someone like my lovely fiance here, like she's very much kind of like center left in like her beliefs, and I'm very much a conservatarian. So we're at different ends of the political spectrum oftentimes. But even we could come together and be like, yeah, Falcon Winter Soldier was bad, And Matt Vader, if you ever see him go off on one of his political tirades. It's a fun thing to watch, so like we don't focus on like the messaging so much as it is our salty reactions to it, which is what makes the shows entertaining.
Yeah, I do have to agree with Matt Vader though. He does like to talk about boobs, and so do we. So,
yeah, no, it's the
shirt,
shirt, the 80s. PG-13.
It might
get
fit
that.
my moobs. That might fit my moobs, actually. Yes, I haven't been to the gym for a couple of weeks.
You should get yourself an 80s tits shirt from the Salty Nerd store.
Yep, saltynerdstore.com. Get it right there.
So
listen, I've been wearing this all day, and I forgot because I put it on because I wasn't going anywhere. And then Kadish was like, "Hey, can you run to Target?" And I didn't remember until some lady like pointed out my tits in Target. She was like, "Oh, that's great," and I was like, "Oh, fuck me."
At least it was a good reaction, though. It was a good reaction.
Yeah, and then I felt like I had to smile at everyone the whole time I was at the store. Like, I'm not a weirdo.
To be fair, people probably haven't seen boobs like that since the 80s, unless they do on TikTok.
80s tits were the best tits. I mean, they weren't good tits, but they were like the best, man.
They were built that way. They were built that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, we just watched Cyborg, which was a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie from 1989, and there was some 80s
Those
boobage.
are some end of an era apocalypse tits.
And can't beat it. It is a shame. We would.
We're talking about politics. We just go right to the boob.
We talk about politics.
Politics.
There you go.
The politics of tits.
That brings all the boys to the yard.
We'd all like to be positive. I mean, we don't want to be angry. We want, as you say, we want entertainment. And I think, unfortunately, I've got into this Pavlovian thing now with having so many disappointments and so many Hollywood throwing us so many curveballs that now my instinctive reaction is to say this isn't going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, this is not going to. This doesn't look great. This is going to be bad. And sometimes things are going to be good.
You know, it's
totally reasonable for Kadish to just tweet, "Hey, here are these reasons why I don't think this is going to be good."
Also, they were incredible points.
Yeah.
Each one of them. I was like,
valid.
nailed it.
So are we talking about boobs again?
Obviously.
Oh, that's still up.
Obviously.
That's still on the screen.
Yeah.
But I think we just may happen to be. I mean, I would disagree slightly in that I think the 80s. Yes, there was lots of bad movies in the 80s, but I think there was generally more production and there was relatively more good ones numerically than we're getting today. Now, there could be a number of reasons for that, such as the last year and a half and so on. But I think there's a perfect storm right now of a certain creative bankruptcy in the creative side. And I'll pick on Hollywood. There's other people making movies, not just Hollywood, but we'll pick on them. There is the messaging and the woke messaging, particularly, that they're trying to drive, and the fact that they seem to be having a great deal of difficulty coming up with original ideas. So they're, as you did mention, of course, they're always been into remakes, but they want to keep going back and mining the past as hard as they can, because they're either having trouble coming up with new ideas and new IPs.
They're afraid,
or they just don't care. Or they're
well,
afraid.
I'll say this real quick, Vigilante. So I don't compliment Alex very often, but his vision for this podcast has always been like, hey, we want to entertain. We don't want to preach. If you want someone to kind of like rage against a certain type of movie or TV show, there's lots of other YouTubers out there that do that. But if you want to get away from like that intense kind of like almost like overbearing negativity, you come to our channel and we'll kind of alleviate that. Like, maybe we'll hate the same movie that these other guys hate, but you come to us to watch us entertain you as opposed to the movie. And so that's always been Alex's vision, and it's worked out pretty well so far, we think.
I do respect that, because it's like, it's not that you're avoiding the topic. It's just that it's not our focus. And I think that's pretty healthy, because
it is.
It does get draining. It does, honestly.
Yeah,
sometimes we're
starting to feel like to move away from that. That's why I try to make fun of it as much as possible.
Like even this Mangold kerfluffle. So like we had a big debate over how we were going to address it on our own channel, and it was like a 3-day long like back and forth between me, Alex, and Vader, and like
we were split.
And so like we shot an episode that's going to be coming out tomorrow on our channel that kind of gives our side of the story of what happened, because we felt like there's so much misinformation out there over like what my tweet was about, how he responded, and so we just wanted to have our story out there for posterity. And I finished. Alex just finished editing the video and uploaded it this morning, and I watched it, and it's a fascinating hour where the four of us just got around. It's like, this is what we were doing, and this is what we were thinking, and like Mangold said this, and we did this. And we had Odin from Odin's Movie Blog call in. He joined the conversation. And it was just like, it was such a fascinating, and I was at the middle of it, and I was listening to this, and I was like, oh, this is fascinating. So we're hoping that other people who watch it will be entertained by this thing, because like we had like a very optimistic attitude about the whole thing. We weren't bitter or angry about it at all.
Well, it's pretty interesting because sometimes this happens a lot, you know, when these like Hollywood types or you know, content creators, when they go after like YouTubers, really all it does is just like give shine to the YouTuber. Really just helps their career. And
I know Kirish has been joking this whole week, like, oh, I actually know Mr. Mangold, and I called him up and was like, hey, can you troll me? And he was like, gotcha, bro.
Yeah.
Like, he's been joking about that all week, but I mean, that's just what happens.
Yeah, we were struggling. So like we were around 700 subs. We were struggling to get that 1K mark. And like I said, we've been doing YouTube since this January, so about 6 months. And it was a grind. Like we were like we had the watch hours, but like the subs, like we kept trying to figure out ways to get our content in front of people, because we think our content's good enough where once people are exposed to it, they'll want to follow us and watch our videos and stuff like that.
Well, you're in luck because there's 14 people watching, so 14 new fans.
14 hardcore people. So
yeah.
Like we love them. But so we were really grinding, and it felt like we'll be lucky if we hit 1,000 by the end of the year. And then Mangold comes along and blew us up. And now like we hit that monetization goal that day. Like we had 1,000 people that day. Now we're close to 1,700, I think.
Nice.
And it's been amazing. So like I like to joke, like we're big James Mangold fans. We owe him a lot.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Logan watch party.
Yeah.
There's always a silver lining.
The Hollywood gods were like, I'm gonna help you guys out.
Yeah, bounce pass. Real quick, we got 2 more joining the panel. Like I said, it gets a little wild. We got just another red shirt. Hail, sir. Welcome.
Not just another red shirt. He's the red shirt.
That's true. That's true. And
there it is.
Hey, buddy.
Hello, folks. How's it
Hello,
going?
sir.
Good to see you. And we also have Culture Casino. Hail, Culture.
Hail, Culture Casino.
Hey. The tiny you've got.
Oh, hey, yeah, this is my set for this is my little studio for my news on Odyssey, which starts on Tuesday. So
oh, cool.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, Culture, the first time you don't have the best hair on the panel. You just got to deal with it.
No, I know. She's got great hair. I know. I hate it.
Oh, stop. Go on.
Me too. I hate it too.
It sucks that Tiffany Haddish is going to play you in your life story.
And the biopic.
Yeah, the biopic. Yeah,
the Culture Casino biopic.
Still, I'd be okay with that. No, So Matt, you guys did great this week. If I could figure out somebody to piss off, I'd do that.
Well, it's funny is I didn't even go after him. I wasn't trying to piss anyone off.
You didn't even mention the guy.
You didn't add him. No. That's the saddest part. He literally looked for people to hate. He was like, "Oh, I need to find some hate because I have this nuclear bomb that I'm working on, and I know this is going to fail. It's the first day of filming. I need to find a hate boner to start a Twitter beat."
He found one, and here's the thing: go back to an interview he did in 2017, 2018 for Screen Rant. Right. And he is essentially saying that, don't attack directors because they're not going to be attracted to these projects. And, you're going to end up with a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. So here he is saying, all of these things that are going directly against what he actually did to everybody else. So, and of course, that was in response to what was happening with Ruin Johnson at the time following up to Star Wars. But, it's just, gosh, you guys. Yeah, no, it was great to watch. I was on vacation. I'm like, oh, this is fun. I'm going to watch this while I'm, driving around. It was great.
So were you guys surprised?
That sounds safe.
Were you surprised by his singling you guys out to attack you? Was it a total surprise?
Yeah, so when I woke up that morning and checked my phone, I saw I had like 1 billion notifications, and I was like, the only time this ever happens is if a big blue check mark kind of singles me out and sends their followers after me.
And let me tell you how pleased he was that morning.
So I was scrolling through my mentions, and eventually I found the blue check mark, and I was like, this name sounds familiar, and then I Googled it, and I was like, oh, this is the director of Indy 5. Well, that explains it.
Yeah.
And so, from there, it was just like, it was such a whirlwind. Like, stuff happened so fast. I don't even think Jude knew exactly what was going on until, like, even after I told her, I don't think she understood the ramifications of what was happening.
Because I'm only a woman with a lady brain.
Yeah.
You're a whammon.
Well, she's also not very active on Twitter, so she doesn't really follow a lot of this
Very
stuff.
That's
true.
a sensible move, dude.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Twitter is poison.
But Matt Vader and Alex, they're on Twitter all the time, and so they were following what was going on. They're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And
Yeah.
Alex being Alex, he tried to kind of make a joke of it,
And that made it worse.
Yeah, where he's the one who posted the picture of our home studio, and then James Mangold started attacking our studio, our jar of corks, our Batman statue.
Yeah.
The quirks, I felt like he attacked me personally, and I was like, let me at him.
Jude,
What's the deal? What's the deal with the jar of corks? I didn't quite get this.
Corky is here with me.
What is this?
Jude is a big wine lover. Like, she drinks a lot of wine.
Nice.
I drink a lot in general.
And every time, well, she lives with me, so she needs to. But every time that she kills a bottle of wine, she just keeps the cork in this big jar. And James Mangold has such attention to detail that when Alex posted the picture, he saw that little cork jar in the background, and he decided to make fun of it. So he was making fun of our Batman statue, our brick wall background, and our jar of corks.
And what Matt says, that the basement line, which I was like, "Oh, you little dick! You're like trying to diminish this person." It's like, "Oh, you're not in a castle like me."
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Matt.
I was going to say, we now call our studio the basement.
Nice.
In honor of James Mangold.
You guys are handling this perfectly.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
Most
Much
of the
more
time,
mature than I would handle it.
I feel like most of the time when people come at you, I feel like you can probably make a joke out of it, and I feel like that's the best way to kind of come out of something is to just agree to laugh about it. And we have. I don't think he has, but we're all laughing about it and laughing all the way to monetization.
Yeah, laughing all the way to the bank.
Mature. It shows the mature one in this conversation. You guys are the mature ones.
Well, but that's Hollywood in general, and and today, I mean, my conversation, we talking about what happened with you guys, was to call him, it's just to rename him a man baby or man child, or because he really diminished himself in his approach to the whole situation.
He looks so petty and juvenile and like a mean girl in high school is how he came across.
Yeah.
You don't have the right friends. You're not popular. That's what it felt like.
And I fool's gold, not mangold. But
what astonished me was I also had to look him up when I first heard about this. I'm not on Twitter, so I don't know which YouTuber started talking about it. And he had a picture of the tweets up and the response, at least the initial response. I didn't hear the whole story. But I went and I looked up James Mangold, and I figured I'd start with IMDb. And sure enough, he's producer, director. And I said, well, what has he directed? Because I think he's directing Indy 5. And I looked down, and I think the most recent film that's not either in production or in post-production is Ford v. Ferrari, which is my absolute favorite film of 2019. It was fantastic. And I thought, what a thin-skinned little, I'll be nice, girl. Girl's blouse. What a thin-skinned big girl's blouse this guy has to be. If he's had that kind of success 2 years ago, I think he's projecting something, because I think he knows that he had a great script, a great cast, a great subject, as long as it didn't go over the audience's head, because 24-hour endurance racing as a duel between two egotistical car manufacturers, that's not an easy sell to your average person. Well, I think he did it really well.
I'll say this about James Mangold. I'll defend him a little bit. He mistook me for someone who I was not. He thought I was an actual journalist. According to him, he said that my tweet was featured on a news website.
Clickbait.
And he mistakenly believed that I was a journalist for this website that made this tweet. and that I was spreading fake news and misinformation. So he came into my Twitter thread thinking that I had way more clout and influence than I actually did, and started coming at me to defend his movie. And
he didn't like act like an adult when he learned that, you know, he kept trying to reframe it.
And he spent like 12 hours straight, like going off. Like, I don't know if you guys saw it because he deleted it, but he went off on this like anti-Trump rant. He went off on this thing defending critical race theory for a little while. And he ended up deleting those tweets. But I mean, like he was just all over the place,
just spiraling. Because he couldn't big time you. He couldn't Hollywood big time you. You handled it like a man.
The first week of production, again, as he reminds us, the first week of production of a major motion picture, probably one of the biggest movies being produced right now.
Well,
he's on Twitter.
One of the weird things, and Matt, you kind of mentioned this earlier, was that so his whole argument was that because the movie didn't exist yet, you couldn't criticize it because you didn't know what you were talking about. And to me, I said, I basically responded like, look, nothing's above criticism. The movie exists in one form or another, be it through a script or through casting or what have you. But the things I listed are objective, verifiable truths, except for the Jonathan Kasdan thing.
Which, by the way, he is accredited for the story. So it's closed.
He had worked on early versions of the script, and I guess when Mangold came in, he kind of like got rid of all that stuff.
Okay, but he's acting like you're like, this is wild. Yeah, how would you possibly think that? You don't even know. Did you read it, Matt? Did you read the script?
Yeah. If my tweet had actually been like a actual like news piece, I would have fact checked it. This was something I just did on sitting on my couch off the top of my head, going off of what I had last read.
Your fans, which would, by the way, all great points.
Yeah,
terrific.
And it was just to my private Twitter feed. I didn't tag anybody. I didn't link to anything. It wasn't meant to sell anything.
It's not even on your podcast feed. It's just your own.
Yeah, it's my personal feed. So it was just like one of those weird things where like, if indeed he did mistake me for a journalist, I still think he didn't handle it very well. Yeah. But, like we would love to have him come on the podcast and tell us all about what he has planned for Indy 5. I mean,
I bet you would. Yeah.
He had to go off on those tangents. He couldn't just keep it to talking about the movie and your differences about the movie. He had to go off under the Trump thing. He had to go off under the critical race. Yeah. Nothing to do with the subject at hand.
Well, I did ask him, like, well, is there anything you can tell us about the story to kind of put our fears at ease? And he said, I believe his reply was something along the lines of, if I tell you anything, it'll give away too much. And I don't want to spoil anything just yet. And so I was like, well, that's fair enough. But then again, like, if you can't tell me anything to assuage my fears, then like I'm still going to have those fears. And, I just tried to be respectful. I don't like to name call online. I don't like to kind of browbeat or I got a lot of flack for being negative about Indiana Jones 5. But to me, there's like two types of criticism.
From who?
Oh, you're not negative.
I mean, it's honest.
Same.
Yeah, there's two types of criticism out there, right? There's the type of criticism that's mean-spirited and meant to be negative, meant to tear stuff down. Then there's the stuff that's coming from a place of love and respect that's constructive and meant to kind of like educate or highlight or what have you. And so I come from film school. I have a very academic background. And so I look at movies kind of analytically. You can just ask Jude when we're on the podcast. I tend to bore these guys with my like high-minded film school kind of breakdown when they're just like,
He's our behind-the-scenes research guy.
Yeah. So like my approach to this stuff is basically like, I just want to be factual. And if somebody disagrees with me, I want to respect their disagreement and engage with them on a academic level, as opposed to like a personal attack level. And so that's how I just handled Mr. Mangold. Was I just kind of spoke to him like a normal human being, not an A-list director. But the difference is, like, every time he'd speak to me, he was doing it in a condescending, kind of snarky way.
Extremely.
And
babe.
Yeah, I didn't mind him coming after me, but it was when he made the comment about our studio, because it felt like he was now attacking my friends and my fiance and my home.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, dude, you're really punching down on this one. Like, we're not multimillionaires like you with like access to $100 million sets and movie stars. Like, we're we're working, like we all have day jobs. We all paid for this stuff out of pocket. We're doing it out of my house.
And you're just doing a thing. And that's the thing that was so frustrating for me. It was like, you didn't even target him. He took it upon himself to make this big grand statement. And then he really insulted you. Like, it was out of line. It was like, what are you doing, man? This is fucked up. These are just guys talking about a movie. You don't need to go after him like that.
Yeah, I mean, having worked in Hollywood, I know how defensive a lot of these artistic types can be. And in fact, a while back, a couple years ago, back when Kate Leopold came out, which is another James Mangold film starring the Wolverine himself, Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan, I can remember I was watching a behind-the-scenes featurette on HBO about it. And there's a scene in there where Viola Davis, big actress now, but at the time, nobody knew who she was. She was playing a small part in that movie as a policewoman who gives a ticket to Leopold for letting his dog poop on the sidewalk. And when they were showing the behind the scenes of that, it was interesting because Viola Davis kept messing up her lines, and Mangold was getting really frustrated with her. And the more frustrated he got, the more kind of rattled she became, and she would mess up more. And I was watching this thing, and it was obvious that Mangold was just a total jerk. And I was like, why are they showing the director being a total jerk? This is supposed to be a behind the scenes propaganda piece.
Sure.
So I just assumed that he's one of those creatives who's kind of James Cameron, like the brilliant artist who's also like a complete asshole.
Dictator, all right, real quick, just gonna pause. Sorry, it's chat maintenance. Man of War 665, neighbor of the beast, with a $6.65 super chat. Thank you very much. First super chatter ever right here. Never forget your first. And it says, "Ooh, you said Mangold? I thought you said Mangina, fuzzy little man peach." Yeah, he definitely did act like a little pussy, and I appreciate the old Greg reference. Thank you, brother. Much appreciated for that super chat, as always. And we have one more person adding to the panel, is Tom from Midnight's Edge After Dark. Hello.
Hey, my good buddy.
What up?
Hey, Tom.
What up, Tam? How's it going?
It's
Hey,
good,
Tom.
man.
I love the new avatar. Love
I
it.
do too.
I'm looking dapper.
Tom,
Yeah.
is there a stream that you're not on?
There's a few.
He's on every stream that's ever streamed.
Matt, you might want to check the DMs in the private chat there. Kadish.
Oh, shit, I have not checked the private chat.
Sounds like you're coming through the wrong mic.
Tom's got some technical observations. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and on the stream itself, you're really quiet compared to everybody else.
I tried to raise.
I think he's coming through the wrong mic. I think it sounds like it's coming through his
Webcam mic. Yeah.
webcam mic. Windows, gotta love it. They keep updating crap every day.
How's that?
Whoa, didn't make a difference.
It's giving you a lovely AM radio sound, though. It's very
Yeah.
old-fashioned and lovely.
Very thin and far away.
Well, I feel like a complete dummy now.
No,
that's all right. I can at least raise the volume for now. That'll help.
It's not necessarily a bad thing to take him down a peg.
Guys, I had my microphone facing the wrong way.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
What an idiot!
I knew it was something. I'm like, just don't sound right because Matt's sexy like smooth voice ain't coming through like it should be.
Now your voice has dropped 2 tones.
The
Sounds amazing.
The stupid Yeti microphone, it looks like you can just talk into any end of it, but
It depends on what setting you have it on.
yeah. So I'm sorry, guys.
So that's a true
All
boomer
right,
moment.
well, start from the beginning, Kadish.
Yeah, right. Start over.
Start all over. I just got here
Welcome
anyway.
to the
so-
MF podcast. So we appreciate it.
The first mic I ever had, I didn't even know there was a front, and I was talking to it backwards for like a month, and I was like,
And we all appreciate
I'm always
that
like,
very
I was
much.
like,
We
why
like
is the but I was like, why is the volume knob on the back? That's a stupid design.
So were you guys unable to hear anything I was saying?
I heard it.
No,
fine.
we heard
No,
nothing.
you could hear it. It
Fine.
just sounded like you
I
could
don't
tell it
even
was
know what
not
that
right. Yeah.
It was good.
It was fun.
It was good.
I've no doubt James Mangold would
now-
be
now you-
mocking you for your sound
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you guys don't have a good mic.
Well,
You guys aren't good enough to criticize my film.
this is what happens when Tom isn't around to support me. I rely on him way too much.
I'm a sound hound on top of it, so that's part of the problem.
Sound hound.
Yes.
Sound hell.
Or just a hound. It's one of the other.
Well, there's that too. but-
Yeah,
Yeah,
Disease
it's-
did say something in chat. I think there were some issues.
Yeah, I heard it fine. So I mean, it didn't sound like
It
like
wasn't
I said.
horrid, but
Yeah,
it was just
but-
like, yeah, it was enough that where it was like you sounded like this far away and shit. Like, yeah, it was.
You were such a sound snob, Tom.
I am.
Yeah.
I know.
What is
I
that?
could be
a
worse. I'll
USB
go back to
mic?
stereo. Hang on.
Yeah. Tom's all like, you have a USB mic, don't you?
Oh my God.
there. Now I'm in
Wow.
stereo.
USB-C though. So
That's awesome. I don't even know how to do stereo. Whenever I try to do it in stereo,
so
I come in one channel.
There's a thing right here. You turn it, and you turn it to the right setting, and then you turn the stereo setting on StreamYard, and
But I don't know. I turned all the knobs. I was streaming Fallout the other night, and they're like, "You're only coming in from one thing," and I twisted knobs and doing nothing changed. So I don't know. I just keep it on mono because I don't know what I'm doing. Because I am a technical.
good stream though. My favorite game too, buddy. I think I've mentioned that before. Fallout New Vegas, my favorite game of all time. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that was
really
great
fun.
stream.
Like, I mean, I replay it, but it's fun to do it like with an audience and like talk about like my thoughts about the game. Like while I'm like in the world, I'm like, oh, this is a lot of fun. Like I really do. Do you guys ever game stream? Kadish or Juju?
So Matt Vader
Vader does.
74 is our resident video game streamer. So he does all the video game stream. I'd like to. I just don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. You have to
I
stay
have a
up
lot of
super
time,
late.
but I don't want to.
I have a lot of time. But I don't
Jude hates video games, by the
Hate
way.
them.
So.
Really?
Really?
Them. Mhm.
Wow.
Why do you hate them? If it's not your thing, like why hate? Where's the vitriol come from?
I feel like everyone has something within themselves that they, it's just visceral, and you have to hate it because you were born that way, and that's the one for me.
Wow, that's intense.
See,
That's intense.
she wants you paying attention to her. As opposed
I was
to-
like, there's something else going on here. I think, yeah, there's another level to this. Hey, Draco.
Yes, that's why Kate
Oh,
is calling me a
Draco.
dog.
That's right.
Hey, Draco.
Draco.
Hail, panel.
Hello, hello.
Hail, the members of the Salty Nerd podcast.
Hi there.
And fuck James Mangold.
The thing is, he just came out. I think he did the worst. I think he damaged himself way more than any of us could. Like he
I
made
think so.
Oh,
you know?
clearly. I mean, here's the thing. Before he did this, all he had to do was keep his mouth shut. And all he had to do was make an Indiana Jones movie that was better than Crystal Skull. That's all. That's all. He didn't have to make the greatest Indiana
wouldn't
Jones
be
movie in
hard.
the world. Just had to be better than Crystal Skull. Now that he's done this, he has put himself at a level where that movie has to be as good as the other movies before Crystal Skull, or everybody's going to say your movie's shit, dude. And Kadish was right. So he put himself out there. Now that's the problem. If he'd just kept his mouth shut, everybody been like, "Oh yeah, it was better than Crystal Skull," and nobody would have batted an eye. Probably that's all it had to be.
Yeah,
And
well, I hope you
probably
have
people would
that.
have been like, yeah, that Kadish guy, he didn't know what the shit he was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Can't
it's
do
a
it
shame
now.
because I had such not a great image of him before, but I liked his movies, and I'd never heard anything from him before of any kind like this. So I was thought, yeah, the guy's okay. No, not so much. But
It's almost like the Kevin Smith clownfish thing. Only James Mango actually had talent.
yeah.
Kevin Smith
Wow,
only made
dude,
poor
one
Kevin
shots
Smith.
fired.
I mean, he
Poor
might
Kevin.
still have
one good movie every
talent.
whole career average.
He had
I
three
mean-
good movies.
Well, it's almost worse than Kevin because at least, and I'm not trying to defend Kevin here, but in his defense, I guess, for lack of a better term.
he can't help that he sucks.
Well,
It's not his fault.
no. I mean, Clownfish was making a lot of videos about him. They were specifically talking about him, and I think they may have even tagged him in a few things. But in this case, with Matt, Mangold went out of his fucking way.
That's true.
And I'm serious when I say he was probably sitting there. He probably just had a rough week because all these leaks were out there. He may have even got chewed out for that for some reason. And then he looks up hashtag Indiana Jones 5, and one of the first thing that pops up is probably Matt's tweet. And he's like, well, fuck this guy. And it's like,
Taking it all out on you.
exactly. Like, I don't think it had anything to do with Matt other than he was just in a bad fucking mood and probably
Hey,
drunk.
I'm
He
very
pulled a trank.
influential. I'm a big deal in
It was the
Hollywood,
corks,
okay?
Matt. It was all the corks.
Yeah,
He is
you
the
affected
corpse.
Disney style.
That's key to all of this.
Listen, the Salty Nerd podcast is the most influential podcast at Lucasfilm. Okay, I'll have you know that.
And it's
So-
all about the corks.
So I'm a big deal. I'll have you know.
Well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because he made you a big deal by making a big deal out of it.
right.
Again, I called him up. I'm like, James, we're having a hard time getting to 1K subs. Can you help us out? And he's like, I got you, bro. I got you.
I'll
It's all
humiliate
game.
myself for your gain.
It's all a game. Yeah. So do we believe though that he is doing his own tweeting, or does he have a sidekick to do it?
Oh, he's totally doing his own tweeting.
He is doing it. We're sure of that.
It was way too personal.
Yeah, exactly. You don't go off like that. You don't have a publicist would stop you.
Yeah.
That was.
That's what it was. Such a good opportunity for a publicist moment too. I was saying that on the other day. I was like, all he had to do was just say, hey, we really appreciate your concerns. We're huge fans of the franchise. We're going to work really hard to make this the best Indiana Jones movie we can make. Blah 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 blah. And this would have been. Accepted. Yeah, and this would have been nothing, and you guys wouldn't be monetized, and it wouldn't have blown up. It would have just been a cute little tweet from Lucasfilm, and then he could privately be like, "Fuck that guy." But it's for him to make it public. It's oh, dude.
You know what's funny is that this isn't the first time something of mine has gone viral, and I've had a lot of negative attention dumped on me.
You mean you haven't talked about this yet?
The Birds of Prey stuff? No, I don't think I told you.
No, I don't know about this.
Tom, do you want to give him a quick breakdown?
Well, sure, I will. I was just going to say earlier before you jumped into this part, I agree with, Script Doctor did a great tweet. And like I said, all he had to do was come out and say, look, I'm apprehensive of anybody who would be directing an Indiana Jones movie if Spielberg wasn't directing too. But I'll do my best to try and, make a good movie. That's all he had to say.
But you didn't even bring up James. You didn't even mention him. It wasn't one of your concerns.
Exactly.
This guy is such a little bitch.
But no, Matt, this isn't the first time Matt has dealt with this. And luckily for him, I know he can attest to this, that this was not nearly as bad as the last time. Last time was a nightmare. He just happened to give his opinion on Birds of Prey, and he pointed out the obvious. And I'm paraphrasing your tweet now, Matt, so I apologize. But it was basically nobody's going to want to go see this because it doesn't look anything like the original comics. And the audience you're trying to appeal to doesn't exist, basically, in so many words. And he got attacked nonstop as a sexist, bigot, and all this shit. Just death threats and everything.
What happened was I made a tweet about Birds of Prey's marketing, where this was before the movie came out, and I basically said that they're marketing this to the wrong demographic. They're trying to appeal to women, but they're doing nothing to appeal to men, which is the actual demographic of a comic book movie. They're
also not enough to appeal to women.
Yeah,
the actual demographic that watched were all men. Mostly men watched Birds of Prey at the end.
Yeah. So I said that all the marketing they were desexifying, Harley Quinn, and they were trying to make it girl power as opposed to appeal to the demographic that goes to these types of movies. And I said, because of this, Birds of Prey is going to fail. And a couple blue check marks picked up on that and sent their mobs after me. And so I got over 600,000 engagements.
Well, and didn't some of the Mary Sue and a few other places pick up on it too or something like that?
Oh, it did all the rounds. You had every major YouTuber, doing stuff about this stupid tweet of mine. And I was getting death threats through my DMs and all this other crazy stuff. And by comparison, the James Mangold thing, his followers, they kind of came after me, but they weren't threatening to hunt me down and kill me and stuff like that. They were actually just kind of you're wrong. We like James Mangold. But the point I was trying to make about this stuff is that when it does happen, usually it happens because the tweet I make is so dead on in its criticism that the only way that, or the thing that makes these people afraid is the fact that I'm right. And so they have to try their best to discredit me and tear down the accuracy of my tweet in order to protect the thing that they want to protect. And I feel like Mangold kind of looked at my tweet and it struck a nerve simply because he's this is pretty dead on. And so he felt like he had to address it. Not for the movie's sake by any means, but for his own ego's sake. So I do think
he was just naked in that moment. You really just got to the core of who he is.
Well, I think that he took my saying Steven Spielberg is not directing this movie as a personal slight.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're not
James. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're not on the level of one of the most influential directors in history. Changed the game several times over. Sorry, we don't have you in that conversation. You did Logan. I mean, it was cool, but Jesus, it's not Schindler's List.
You mean X-Men 7 or whatever?
God, what a douche. Jed's here. Hey, Jed.
What's up,
buddy?
brother?
No, I remember I got dumped on a bit because I was like,
intro.
Hey, Jed, I made
Hey,
a
Tom.
comment on Matt's thing. I'm like, it's because of guys like Matt, insinuating all of us YouTubers and pundits and stuff, that people even know who James Mangold is. Because I remind people, people still think Steven Spielberg directs the Jurassic World movies. Like, the general audience knows 3 directers.
Right, that's true.
Steven Spielberg, Alfred Hitchcock, and that's about it.
Maybe
and
Tarantino.
Yeah.
Maybe James Cameron.
Maybe Zack Snyder and James Cameron.
Martin Scorsese,
Maybe Martin Scorsese. There's
those
that
guys.
handful, but
5.
They don't know. They have no fucking clue who Mangold is. Not a clue in the least. Like, he directed the 8th fucking X-Men movie. Woo!
Tom's right on that, though.
Tom, you're right. I only know 3 directors, but one of them is Stanley Kubrick.
Well, there you go. Stanley Kubrick's another one. There's
He's
that.
been dead for 20 years.
Exactly. There's that stable of directors that everybody knows, and there's only 2 that are still alive.
This is a result of the director as auteur that we have had since, I don't know, the 70s or 80s at least. Now they're all auteurs. They're not just...
Not really.
Well, yeah, for every Chris Nolan, you get 20 J.J. Abrams. That's the problem.
That is the problem right there.
Look, and the thing is, isn't Mangold the guy you bring out when you're going to kill a hero?
Well, kind of, sort of.
Well,
what do you
think
mean by
about that?
Logan.
That's the reason why, and I will say this, and I said this on Twitter. Indy's done for.
He's dead. Stop it. He's already dead.
It's already dead.
There's only 3 movies. So
look, they're gonna put his consciousness in a robot body that looks just like him, and
then he's gonna apologize to everybody.
Sure,
but it'll be like
you mean like P hard?
I'm
sorry. Could do that.
Matt's joking about this right now, but I agreed today on Midnight's Edge's stream that Paulie and I would watch in real time on live streams freaking season 1 of Picard, and I'm like, I just came to the realization
I stayed out of
to
it.
do that.
Why?
Why did you agree to that?
I did
Why
not
did you agree
condone
to that?
or
I don't
get
know.
in the way.
I was happy.
Fine.
I was in a good mood. I had time off, kind of ish.
I don't solve
Let the
that.
happies
It's the
choose your
equivalent-
actions.
Yeah.
I watched one episode and I was out. I couldn't see any of the others. I was done. I tapped out.
So I just wanted to ask the Salty Nerd guys, one show that you do like or did seem to like is Mythic Quest.
Oh, we love Mythic Quest.
Yeah, I naturally had a suspicion of it because it was on Apple TV Plus, which immediately made me So you guys feel it's a worthwhile view, not too woke, not
100%. Yeah,
See,
it's one of my favorite shows that's airing today. I think it's really funny.
Cool.
One of the good
I might
things
give it a
about
look.
one of the good things about Mythic Quest is that they do address a lot of the woke stuff, but they make fun of everything equally. So they'll make fun of the left and the right, and they'll do it in such a smart way where you don't feel like you're being preached to. You feel like you're in on the joke, and that's one of the brilliance of it's a lot like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's made by the same people. So if you like that show, you'll like Mythic Quest.
Okay.
Plus it's got that, it's produced by Ubisoft, and it's got that video game mentality to it. And so if you're a big gamer, you'll really appreciate it because it has a lot of inside jokes about video gaming and stuff.
Okay, cool.
Well.
And they do have characters that want to push the agenda. We have to say something, but then they also in the same scene will have characters who make fun of it and are like, "You're fucking annoying. Why are you doing this? It's gonna ruin it."
That's cool.
No, thanks for the recommendation. Yeah.
So just to clarify,
definitely watch it.
You hate video games, but like video game based TV shows.
Good
I don't like
observation.
video games, but I like this show. So
Yes, you like
if you watch it, DM me
That's-
and be like, "You're a fucking idiot. It's stupid," or tell me you like it or whatever. I just
So how
like
about the
attention.
new Ryan Reynolds movie where he's an NPC? Are you going to watch that?
Yep, we're gonna review that.
Oh
Video
yeah.
games.
Free guy.
Well,
Free
we
guy.
gotta say goodbye to the Salty Nerd people.
Oh man, I had a question.
It's so hard to say goodbye. Sorry.
Will you answer a culture's question? You can say no. I think that's
You don't have
fine.
to answer that.
Mr. Kadish, if you wouldn't mind, stooping to my level to answer this question. real quickly, do you think Indiana Jones 5 is going to take place in space?
Yeah,
No, but
Oh my
Fast Nine
God.
does.
Non-zero,
Oops,
the answer is
spoilers.
I think
know,
it's all going to take place in a dream.
It's probably going to lead into Fast and Furious 10. So it wouldn't surprise me if Indy ends up going to space at the very end. So maybe.
Because there's more.
Those aliens from 4 got to come back some way. Got to tie it all together.
It just makes me sad.
You know what's sad is I knew that shit about F9 like 2 weeks ago from R&B, and I couldn't say nothing.
Oh.
Do they go to space? They do, right?
I can't say.
I want them to go to space. I think
The
that's
only
hilarious.
reason I want to see that movie
Since
is
I can't
because-
say, you know the answer.
Yeah. I want to see that.
Like
Like,
Edinburgh, my
Aw.
hometown. So I want to see it.
Why?
I want to see it because of the Edinburgh stuff.
And I think
It's the
everybody
first one
knows
I've
they're
been-
going to space.
yeah, I think that's great. It's the first one I've been interested in since like the first one. So it's like, yeah, they're going to space. I'm in. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's
if
put
you're-
Vin Diesel on a
If you're
rocket
upping
ship.
the ante on the ridiculous, I'm in.
Oh yeah.
I'm in too.
No, they win, dude. They're flying supercars between buildings. I mean, come on.
That's
Let
awesome.
Robert Meyer Burnett hear you say you're going to watch it. He analysed the physics of the stunts. And, it didn't come out well.
Waste of everyone. That's a waste of time, Robert. I think you just, yeah. Well, anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. Really appreciate you guys coming on.
Hey,
That was,
I want to
really
ask
awesome.
him one thing, Matt. Hey, how are you guys holding up? Because I was on the stream with you guys earlier. So, are you guys tired?
Not really. Like, the reason we're bailing out is because I want to have some quality time with my lovely fiance.
Yeah.
Because we
Hopefully
haven't
she
had a
gets
lot
too
of.
drunk.
Yeah, we've been so busy this week. We haven't had a lot of
Good
time.
choice.
To spend
Bullshit.
together,
I
so-
just showed up
Yeah.
so you want to leave. That's all.
Me and
Well,
Tom show up and they're like, "Hey, we don't."
Fun
Honestly,
fact.
he was like, "I'll see if you can come on too, so that we can see each other." Because this is the only time we've seen each other all day.
I have told him
Different live
before
streams.
he can bring you guys on, but he's just like, no, I don't want anybody else taking my spotlight.
I know he's always got to keep me in my place because I'm a vagina.
You
Well,
can't escape Tom, man.
Good man. Good man, Matt.
It's the vagina and the 80s tits. That's what does it.
Yeah, the
Jude-
80s tits does it. Yeah.
I'm fighting a losing battle.
Jude is actually going to be on Toxic Femininity on the Midnight Touch.
I was just going to say that, but I wasn't sure if, yeah.
Oh, that's
Nice
awesome.
plug.
I was going to say, you
Yeah.
can't escape Tom. It doesn't matter if you leave now. You can't escape him. He's
Well,
everywhere.
I text him every day, so it's not like.
Oh, I get oppressed on Toxic Femme, so you can gang up on me and impress me with the rest of the ladies. So
Well, speaking of which, where can they find you guys? Where can people subscribe to your stuff?
Okay, so if you go to saltynerdvideo.com, that takes you right to our YouTube channel. We've got over 400 videos on there. We do 3 main shows a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but we do
when I
daily
do
content.
shows.
We just had today our Star Trek movies 4, 5, and 6 review
I
come
have
out.
fallen deeply in love with Star Trek. This is my first watch for everything.
She hasn't gotten to the Kurtzman era yet, so she's still in the
Oh,
honeymoon
don't
phase.
no.
Yeah, don't do it. Yeah.
And
No.
tomorrow on the saltynerdvideo.com channel, we've got our Mangold response coming out. So we did a little video kind of telling our side of the story of the Mangold drama. And if you guys prefer to listen, you can go to saltynerdpodcast.com, and that'll take you, if you're like on an Apple phone, it'll take you to Apple Podcasts. If you're on Android, it'll take you to Spotify or Google. And basically, we upload audio versions of our shows as well, so you can choose which ones you like best. And, if you've got a long commute or you're traveling or something like that, we do long form content, so it's a good way to pass the time. And Matt, thank you so much for having us on tonight. We really appreciate you highlighting our struggle against the Hollywood elite.
Stay punk, bro. Stay punk.
Yeah.
And the pleasure's all mine. It was great to have you. I was glad you guys responded and that you were excited to come on because I saw it and I just imagine what that would be like if it were me. And it was just like it was such a petty, shitty thing that he did. So I definitely wanted to talk to you about it. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your side of the story, brother.
And Vigilante, it was good to meet you and the rest of your panel. Good to talk to you all. And
nice meeting
It's
you.
a pleasure.
And
Right
shout
on.
out to the dog. What's the dog's name?
Oh, this is
Kurt-
Kurt Russell Terrier.
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell Terrier.
That's clear. All right. Well, thank you guys. You guys have fun now. Be safe.
Thank you so much.
Love you guys. Take care.
Take care.
Yeah.
talk to you
Bye.
later.
Guys.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.